You know, we'll have more people joining us. And I apologize for the dog in the background. Want to welcome everybody to this spotlight on Barrio Alegria and its very interesting community partnership that it's doing. We want to have you mute your microphones unless you're doing the presentation, but keep your cameras on because it's always nice to see living people. I'm going to turn this over quickly to John Weidenhammer for a brief welcome as well, and then I'll come back and do some more ground rules. John.
Thanks, Dave. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining our session today. We're really thrilled that so many of you could be with us today. Dave, thanks for all your efforts to organize this. And I want to take a moment to thank our presenters. I think we have a really terrific presentation for you. As you know, the
Tootsies are cold.
As you know, the Berks Alliance is a collaboration of anchor institutions in our community, and we're focused on terrific organizations like Barrio and like to bring news of this kind of activity to you. So Dave, I'll turn it back to you to continue the program.
Thank you, John. I'm going to cover some ground rules really quickly at the beginning of this. As I said, please keep your microphone muted unless you're doing a presentation, but your camera on. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to submit them through the chat function, which you'll find at the bottom of the screen. We'll collect those and go over those when we get done with the formal presentations. We will record this program and send it to everybody who registered for the events. We know that we don't always get everybody who registers showing up because people like sometimes to watch this in their own time rather than our time. So you get a copy of the video. We'll also post it on the Berks Alliance website, and I'll send you that link. And our friends at BCTV will post it on their YouTube channel. So it'll be readily accessible. You can watch it many, many times. We're really pleased to have you all here today. It is, I said, a wonderful day. It's a shame to be inside having to do this, but we're here. And I want to turn the beginning of the program over to Pat Giles, who would take it from here. Pat is with the Weimacin Foundation, and she'll explain why they were involved and how they were involved with this program. So Pat, to you.
All right. Hello there, everybody. Happy Cinco de Mayo. So I thought this might be a good opportunity to just give a little bit of background about the Weimacin Foundation before we get into the gist of the program that we're talking about today, because we recognize that not everybody who on this call maybe knows about the Weimacin Foundation. So let me just give a little bit of background. We're a local private foundation, nearly 100 years old, and we were formed by the German industrialist Ferdinand Thun, who helped to establish the Weimacin Industries. What most of us think of as the former VF Outlet buildings, now housing businesses like the Works, B2 Bistro, and Knitting Mills development group of businesses over there. The Thun family's commitment to building a successful business, the Weimacin Industries, which, by the way, at the time, at the height of its success in the 20s and 30s and so, it was the largest manufacturer of full fashioned hosiery, otherwise known as stockings, in the world. And it really was an incredible complex of businesses going on, not just making the hosiery itself, but also some of knitted trim and braid and other products that went into garments, and also the machinery that helped make all those things. But the Thun family's interest in their business didn't stop at the business itself. It went to the employees and the quality of their life. And really, they focused on not only providing good jobs for folks, good paying jobs, but they provided things like they had a medical and dental clinic on site. at Weimacin Industries. They had a fully accredited junior college, what became known as the Weimacin Polytechnic Institute, the forerunner of Penn State Berks campus. But they also then extended that into the broader community around Weimacin Industries, making sure that the borough of Weimacin had a whole variety of affordable, high quality housing options for people. They could walk to their jobs at Weimacin Industries, and also made sure that the borough of Weimacin had lots of park space available and lots of other amenities. So their commitment to the business and the community around their business was really exceptional. And then that also extended through their philanthropy to other important organizations and nonprofits in the community, such as Reading Public Museum, Reading Hospital, and lots of other community organizations. And so that legacy is what is at the foundation of the Weimacin Foundation today. And we are certainly committed to extending that legacy and building upon it to meet the needs of our local community in this day and age. So how are we putting that legacy into practice? A variety of ways, and certainly as a grant-making foundation, we provide grants to nonprofit organizations, all different kinds of organizations, different size organizations, addressing a whole variety of community needs that exist in the community. And our staff works with organizations to go through the grant-making process, and our board of directors is the group of individuals who approve all of those grants. And if any of you on this session want to learn more about our grant making, you certainly can find information on our website and contact any of us listed there directly. But the majority of our funds today don't go directly to general grant making. It goes specifically to economic and community development work. And we do that working with a variety of partners in the community, both private and public, to accomplish that. And a portion of this work is focused on our 4 task forces that are geographically based, primarily in the city of Reading and around it. And that includes our South of Penn task force that Berks Alliance actually did a session that covered that work a couple of years ago now, Dave, I think. One in Northeast Reading, our newest one around the Goggle Works in the city, and then our original one in West Reading. And through those task forces, we get to better understand and respond to the needs of the residents living in those neighborhoods and help our task force members, which, as I said, include both governmental entities as well as nonprofits, to put activities and programs in place to address them. So how does the Faro grant program relate to the foundation's legacy and the work that we're doing today to uphold that? Over the last 2 years, as we began to reconsider all that we've been doing in light of both COVID, of course, and our renewed commitment to furthering diversity, equity, inclusion in the community, we realized that although much of our funding and community development work was benefiting people of color and marginalized populations, it wasn't enough. And part of that is because much of the funding that was flowing through larger, more established nonprofits those nonprofits weren't being led by people who were being served. They didn't reflect the demographics and the experiences necessarily of the people who were being served. And we were concerned as well that our grant application process might be too intimidating for some small, less experienced groups or organizations to know how to navigate that process, or didn't even know about our existence and how to approach us. So we began to consider a pilot program that we described as being community directed, and really saw this as an added element of our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We accomplished we wanted to go beyond this statement about our intent to do more with DEI and to recognize the need for greater equity in who and what we fund, and to begin to share the power of who and what we fund with those who best understand the people and communities we hope to improve. People who have lived experiences that align with the issues being addressed. And we hope to accomplish two things. We hope to be able to learn about and learn from some of the passionate individuals and smaller, newly organized nonprofits and community groups that we traditionally don't have much opportunity to get to know or to fund. And to do that, we needed to engage others in the community who could best connect us to those folks and give them the responsibility of reviewing and recommending which projects to support. Our board was highly enthusiastic about our embarking on this, and they approved this concept. So then, how are we going to do that? Well, we reached out to our good friends at Barrio. We've been working with and partnering with Barrio for the last 6 years or so, and we couldn't think of a better partner who could be our connectors to the community, and who could, in particular, their leadership development cohort, made up of a group of young, relatively young, but inexperienced folks in the community who had already self-identified and stepped up to say that they wanted to learn more about the community and they wanted to make a difference in the community. So we thought they'd be the folks who maybe would be willing to partner with us on this project. And they, of course, said yes. And so we're all here today. I want to just briefly mention the roles that we saw each organization playing in this partnership. The Weimacin Foundation's role was primarily to provide the pool of funding that could be available for these grants to be distributed among smaller nonprofit groups or groups of committed people working in the community today. And our role was to help provide assistance and facilitation to the leadership development cohort group of folks who would be working on this and working with us intensively on this. This was going to be a long process that they were going to need to spend time learning about and then investing time in making decisions. Their role was to be the decision makers. They were the ones who were being asked to design the grant making process and all of the tools and the materials that went along with that, and to then review and evaluate all the grant applications and make the recommendations and present those recommendations to the foundation board. And my role was also to ensure that whatever they decided would be consistent, of course, with our legal and fiduciary requirements as a grant-making organization and the funder of record. So with that all said as background, I now will turn it over to Daniel and the rest of the folks at Barrio who are going to talk about how they made all that happen. And just as a little teaser, the Weimacin Foundation held its board meeting 2 weeks ago now to approve the first round of Faro grants. And so you will hear about all of the work that was done and the results of that work to date. So Daniel, you can take it from here.
Thank you so much, Pat, for that wonderful introduction and the history lesson on local history. It's always great to know. Thank you so much for the Berks Lions to having us here. And yeah, I will include myself in the group of young people who made this happen. And are making this happen. The lead inside of that whole group, helping us reach the consensus for the applicants which applicants would be decided was Arlene Pimentel, who I am going to cede the post to. Before that, I did wanted to mention to everybody who's on the meeting today that yeah, accessibility is our prime focus on this project, and we internally had many conversations about what that means, and so it's going to be great for you guys to stay with us so that you can also learn about when to apply, how to apply, and learn from our lessons, learn from our mistakes, from our lessons so you can take this onto the next level. Arleni?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. So I hope everyone can see that. Okay, great. I saw a nodding head. So here today we have actually a few of the members from the leadership cohort that are going to be presenting with us, and I will allow them to introduce themselves when it's their turn. But today we're going to talk about our project, which are the Faro community grants. And then just an introduction, a little bit on from our perspective. Thank you, Pat, for a great introduction yourself. So after the Weimacin Foundation approached us about this, community grants, we had no idea really what we were getting into. Our leadership cohort is made up of about 8 to 10 members, depending on the year. And each member is tasked with doing their own project or helping out with the project. And through the year-long process, they also receive training as far as professional skills, any work-related skills and things like that. So this was brand new to the leadership development cohort. And I am actually not part of the leadership development cohort. I came on just for this project as a pilot to see how it would work. So I am not part of the cohort, but everyone else here who will be presenting is. So if you have questions about the actual cohort, you can ask them as well. But the cohort started having conversation about what this means for their group and what it means for the organization. They did research on participatory voting, community grants, what best practices were. They had presentations from a few local foundations that kind of went through their process and how they work. And then we also brought in some speakers. So they did a lot of research, how they can make it work, and then also how to make this accessible for community members and community groups. Because one of the things that Pat talked about earlier on is that, normally when you sit down to write a grant, it is a little confusing for some, and it requires a lot of information. You have to log into this whole new website and understand how to do it, and then understand what the questions mean and what answers is expected of you. And that's can put off a lot of people. So we have a lot of groups in the community that are doing really good work, but don't see themselves as someone who would apply for a grant. So we looked at all that information that we received, and then how can we make this accessible for others? So the cohort did decide that it fit in with what Barrio is doing, and they started working on how to create this project. And so a subset of the cohort got together, and they were the ones leading this project with the help, of course, of Pat and the Weimacin Foundation. So we had 4 leadership development cohort members that were part of the process, and you will hear from them later on. They created the Faro committee, which was not named Faro, and I'll talk about where that name came from for anyone who's a little confused. As you saw in the beginning, this is the logo. So Faro in Spanish is Spanish for lighthouse. And what we wanted to do with this was shine the light on smaller community groups and individuals who were doing work in the community, and then helping them, fund the project or even grow it. And so that was what we decided to focus on, and that's why it is named Faro. And for this year, at least, the committee decided to focus on community work that brought people together. So we decided that it couldn't be a one-day event, because although they're great, because I know I love festivals and I love anything that's fun, but it's very superficial. We were looking for projects that really brought people together more than once and created those interpersonal relationships. And then we decided that each grant was going to be $5,000, so that was a pot that could be used to either fund the project or grow it. And we created an application process, which was fun in itself. We put it up on our website. We also did a press release, and we did videos called Adulting Sucks with Daniel as the host. So if you have some time and you want to hear that, it's on YouTube. Type in Adulting Sucks, and you'll see it. It'll come up. And those videos were really meant to help new grant writers understand the process. And Daniel goes over his own process so that they can get ideas on what they can do. We also had 2 community leaders help some of the applicants write their application. Since it couldn't be us, we reached out to others in the community to help out. And after all of that happened, we received 24 applications, which was amazing as a pilot program. And I'll talk about the timeline a little bit. It was open for a very short period of time, and we received 24 applications. So we were really happy with that turnout. So as far as the process goes, like I mentioned, it was late 2020 when the Weimacin Foundation brought this idea to us. And then the applications went live last year in November. They closed January 15th, I believe. And so, like I mentioned, it was a really short period of time. You also have the holidays, and we were really happy with the number of applications and the quality of applications that we received. Now, we just, as Pat mentioned, did a presentation to the Weimacin Foundation board, and they approved all 5 applications that you'll hear about in a little bit. And we were able to let them know, and they were very happy. Some of the individuals had never received a grant before. So we were really excited to be part of that. We, during this time, met for about 11 meetings. So these were, again, volunteer basis on everyone's part, and we came together usually in the evenings for about an hour or so to plan out the process of the application, to discuss all of the applications that came in. And we had a great scale that we used thanks to Pat, and we were able to really learn how to read a grant application and be able to decide how does this fit into what we were asking for. So everyone that applied had to fill out the application on our website, which was a Google form. They also had to send in a video. So we figured for some people it's easier to explain their project than it is in video form than it is to write it out. So we really wanted to give those options for anyone who didn't feel comfortable with the application itself. Then they had to send in any supporting documentation. One of the things that the committee did was also help to find fiscal sponsor for individuals that needed, or groups that needed a fiscal sponsor, because they did have to have a 501c3 status to receive these grants. And we were able to help a few of the applicants with that. And so they had to send in that information. And then, like I said, the committee met and discussed all of the different applications that came in, and we had a great time doing it. We learned, we met a lot of new individuals, a lot of new groups that were doing work in the community. And although we weren't able to fund everyone that applied, we did pick 5 applications, and we're really happy to see that come to life. So these 5 applications, each one of the members from the subcommittee will present. I will do the first one, and then I will pass it off to Fabiola. So the first application, and they're not in any kind of order, they just, as they came out, was for Ashley De Jesus, who has been working in the north side of the city, or what she calls the north of Penn. That's the name of their group. And they're doing cleanups. So they have been doing cleanups for a while. Ashley De Jesus actually worked with the South of Penn Task Force as an intern for the cleanup initiatives in the south of Penn. And then she took everything that she learned through that internship and took it to her own community, which is as Barrio what we want to see happen. So she worked around the Front and Schiller Park to do cleanups, to do family events. I've been to, I think, one or two, but she's been doing this for a while. And so we were really happy to be able to fund that group to do more. So they will be doing monthly themed cleanups. And the first one, I believe, is this month. They're partnering up with different organizations such as the Public Works, One Love, with South of Penn to do many of these cleanups and family events. So I believe that is the first one. Again, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat. We do want to say thank you to the Fiscal sponsors who are working with these groups. For North of Penn, it is the Goggle Works. And I will pass it off to Fabiola.
Hi, my name is Fabiola Flores. I am the micro-learning facilitator at Barrio Alegria and also a leadership cohort member. So Jay, or aka Pagoda Apparel, Pagoda Records. So a little bit about myself is I often interact with entrepreneurs. That's why the mix-up. And through this line of work, every single time I get to talk to an entrepreneur, there's this passion that admits when they start telling their story. And Jay doesn't fall short of that. When he first started interacting with Barrio, it became from him looking for a space to produce his music. And Barrio, allowed him this space for free, nothing in exchange, and just gave him blind trust. And since then, he kind of vowed to return that same community sense that Barrio gave him. And he's done this since 2017 until recent by helping local independent artists, grow as artists. And also, he's recently teamed up with Time Bank to give local artists that studio time that many of them may not be able to afford, but because of their volunteerism, they are able to pay with it with time bucks. One issue that Pagoda City Records have encountered was a disconnect between artists and consumers, because many times you listen more to those big names and artists are often lost in that shuffle when they're not properly promoted. And so to kind of combat that issue, Pagoda City Records wants to create ciphers, which is a gathering of rappers, beatboxers, and producers making music together. And this will create an ecosystem that will bring together local independent artists, and they can collaborate together, grow together, and thrive together. There will be 4 ciphers, and each will be facilitated and recorded, and then they will be able to use this as promotional material. The fiscal sponsor for this would be the Goggle Works. And that's about it for me. I'll pass it on to Kaylee. Now.
Hi, I'm Kate Carpintero. I volunteer with Barrio Alegria. I'm part of the leadership cohort. Also, I used to work for Barrio Alegria as the eviction prevention coordinator. With that, they helped me get to the position that I am right now, which I work for Berks Coalition to End Homelessness for their rental assistance application. So yeah, I wanted to dive into Elta Jackson Henry. She's a local member here in our community in the city of Reading. So with her background, she's done community work, specifically the work that she's done was for the Snoopy Cares project. The history behind that is in her neighborhood, which is around Essex Playground. So in her neighborhood, there was a traumatic event where a child got passed away from a hit and run, I guess through bicycling. And so with her work, she gathered the community in a way to heal. So what she did was she created, like I said, the Snoopy Cares project. And the meaning behind the project was because the child's favorite toy character was Snoopy. So she wanted to commemorate him through that. And so with what she did was she created an event where she did bicycling safety. She provided resources for the community, social services for the community, and how to pretty much help them heal through this mourning process. And so with that, she applied for this grant to instill confidence and life skills in Black and Brown children. Specifically, if you see her video that she submitted, she mentioned that in the playground, she would hear these little kids, say negative things towards each other and not saying the nicest things. So she wants to combat that by giving them the space to providing them the space to communicate with one another in a safe, healthy environment. And with that, she wants to create different methods for that. So that would be through book clubs, journaling, field trips into spaces where they've never been. Specifically, I know she mentioned she wants to take them to like local restaurants or places where like people of color are like the owners. Also mental, physical health education, and a bunch of other community services, especially to get the parents involved. And so, yeah, so we picked this application because, from that history that she's done, it really, she really followed like what we wanted to be part of this project. She's in the community, she lives in the community, she knows how to talk to people. And of course, I feel like she would be she was perfect to get accepted for this grant. So yeah, I think that's everything that I covered. So now I'm gonna pass it off to Kristen.
Hello, my name is Chris. I am a member of the LDC at Barrio, and I'm also currently employed through the Reading Public Library as kind of like a community engagement intern at Barrio. So another project we decided to fund was Bring the Change, which is led by Alexander Civil, and their project is called Sundays at the Park. So really the whole mission of Bring the Change is to make people feel like to empower people to be the change they want to see in their community, to reassure people from Reading that they don't need to leave Reading to make the changes that they want to see, that the change they want to see can be created in Reading. So another part of their mission is to facilitate and to provide the materials and other things that people need to create successful change in the city of Reading. And one of the ways they decided to do that was to create a stronger sense of community in Reading through Sundays at the Park. So Sundays at the Park would just be an organized gathering I think it was the last Sunday of every month, just to do organized community events like board games, movie nights, stuff like that, to build community. So with a greater sense of community, people can feel more empowered to create the changes that they want to see. Each month we'll have a different theme targeting different age groups and people. So it's definitely not exclusive to any what's the word? Group of people. But yeah, I thought this was a very, very good project to fund because I definitely do know, especially as a recent high school graduate, tons and tons of people who feel like they can't make a change here in Reading, who feel the need to leave the city and go like hundreds or thousands of miles away just to really make their mark on the world, feeling like they can't make a mark here in Reading when that's really not true. So yeah, love Bring the Change. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Daniel.
Thank you, Chris, for that. And then I just remembered that I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Daniel Eguskiza. I am the executive director of Barrio Alegria, and it is my honor to introduce this project that is led by Reading's own Nadine Smet-Weiss. Nadine, for those of you that know Nadine, they are a gentle soul, very giving, very caring. And around the time of the pandemic, when we realized that sharing stories was going to be the difference between, for many of us, the difference between having good mental health, having values to follow, having models to look up to. Nadine decided that one of her personal missions was going to be to collect stories, and through the leadership development cohort, through the connections that they have with Barrio, decided to begin a more formalized collection and publication of those stories. So her project is very aptly named Then Many Threads, One Fabric. That is going to be collecting stories, community stories that will be printed and distributed throughout the community and posted electronically on Berks, on BCTV's website. As you know, these stories will be curated and accessed forever because they will be stored on BCTV. And we are very excited to be part of that collection, as well as other organizations that Nadine will be reaching out to. So we were really touched by the application because Nadine was able to really formalize this big need, this big void after the fall of Reading's newspaper, and leaving that void. We needed people to step up to it. I think that's one of the reasons why we funded this. And then are we going into Q&A, Arlene? Or are we going into, because I know that, do you have any questions? Yeah.
Well, maybe you can talk a little bit about the future or what we plan to do.
Yeah, so at this
Good move. Thank you, Arlene.
at the Weimacin board meeting, it was decided, I believe, that we are going to be going into a second round of these. And yeah, because we received, as Arlene said, several applications that were really worthy. But unfortunately, because of the amount of funding, the funding is limited, and this is a pilot project. So we couldn't fund everything. But I don't want to answer questions, or I don't want to go into things when there are questions in the chat. Dave, do you want to read the questions, select some questions for us?
I'm gonna start asking a bunch of questions. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And we will open it up maybe to the group at the end. Pat, you want to say something quickly?
Yeah, I just want to add another point. They presented the 5 grants that were officially designated as Faro grants, But I also want to add that there were 2 other grants that came through the Faro application process that when we saw what they were, which were focused on actually creating murals, 2 different locations for murals in south of Penn, we pulled them out of the Faro grant program, and the Weimacin Foundation agreed to fund those 2 grants on the side as part of our South of Penn task force activities. So there are actually 7 grants that got $5,000. I mean, 7 organizations that got $5,000 grants each that resulted from the Faro program.
Thank you, Pat. And that's 7 that's a beginning nice impact, and having 25 apply is pretty significant, I think pretty substantial. Tanya raised the question about will there be a second round, and Daniel, you've already started to mention that, but talk about that, when it would open up, who can apply, how they go about applying, that kind of stuff. I presume it'll be the same sort of thing, and they'll have to learn about adulting sucks.
We'll have to do some more videos. So the timeline will stay pretty much the same. It'll open up late fall, and then we'll stay open until January. It is, again, it's pilot program, so we don't know, you know, how this is gonna end necessarily. We're still working on all those loose ends and side pieces that need to happen, but the timeline will most likely stay the same. We will, just like we did this time, send out a press release and put it out. I know we did a lot of, especially Daniel did a lot of direct communication with groups that we already knew were doing work. So we will most likely do that as well.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, as Arlene said, you know, the work of this first pilot round isn't done yet because the grants have just been awarded. So all of the project activities obviously haven't taken place yet. So the you know, the same group of folks who had the responsibility of evaluating all the applications and coming up with the recommendations for the grants to be awarded also now need to help monitor the projects that have been funded and to help develop a final report that they can then look at and review and evaluate the success of both the individual projects and the overall program itself. And like they did with the application process, by including a video element as kind of a non-traditional piece of it, they're thinking of doing something non-traditional in terms of final reporting that will be a little bit more multimedia fashioned, or you know, an easier way for folks to report back on their successes and or challenges in carrying out the grant activities.
Yeah, that's great, Pat. I think that sort of engagement is really sort of neat. I think one of the questions, I think, is how can people find out more about what these projects are doing? How can they go about supporting them? Is there, particularly a couple of these seem to be, you know, the Sundays in the Park sounds like something that would be really neat to engage a lot of people in. The cleanups, I think, are really critical. That's really cool. Have there been thoughts about how to let the world know other than posting them on BCTV and YouTube?
I mean, Barrio does have a newsletter that goes out, so we did send out a newsletter to everyone that signed up for our newsletter, but I think, Daniel, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, so one of the things that we plan on doing is adding on our website a series of profiles on the organizations, on the initiatives. I do want to mention that these are not necessarily organizations that are doing the work. The organizations are fiscal sponsors. So there are some requirements. I don't know if Arlene mentioned this part. We wanted to limit the amount to 200 budgets for organizations to $250,000 or less to apply, just so that there could be you know, more equitable access to smaller initiatives. Now, that doesn't mean, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Now, so as a fiscal sponsor, the organizations can have a larger amount, but the work itself, the funds that are going to be going toward, they have to be less than 250,000 a year.
Yeah, it seems to me that part of the power of what you're doing is you're empowering groups in the community that may not have felt engaged before, might have felt neglected in some fashion, and aren't enormous. That gives them some opportunity to shine a light on what they're doing and how they're doing it. So I think that's really cool. Could you talk about what the fiscal sponsors do? That might be a role that some other entities might be interested in doing somewhere down the road. Daniel?
Yeah,
Ready?
the fiscal sponsor really is the agency that receives the funds. They have to enter into an agreement with the initiative, the person doing the work, and then distribute the funds judicially. I think that comes from our mentality of seeing people doing great things. We consider ourselves pretty plugged into what's going on in the community. And we were surprised by some of the applications that we received. There were some initiatives, some groups that we had never heard about before. So that was great. And our role, I feel, as community organizations that are a little bit more established, is to look at them and say, how can we help you, with, respecting that they know their own community, that they know their own neighborhood, not necessarily coming to them and saying, all right, like, you are doing things this way. Now this is how you have to do it, but respecting how it is that they have done it, and us just simply being there to help. So shout out to all of the organizations that signed up to be fiscal sponsors, because we really needed you guys to be there, and you rose to the occasion.
So are you looking for other groups to be fiscal sponsors as you move ahead here, Daniel?
Probably in the future. Yeah. In the future, we will need it for sure.
Yeah, it seems to me that's a good way for other organizations to help with this without interfering with it.
Yeah.
Chris, there's a lot of power in what you were saying about, particularly being a recent graduate, and talking about the sense that you felt of being engaged now in the community rather than being neglected by the community. Could you talk a little bit more about that? How that felt in you?
Yeah, it actually is super convenient that the venue they chose is City Park. City Park is actually kind of my backyard to an extent. I live only a couple blocks away, super convenient for me, and I definitely will be attending these events. But it really is nice to feel a genuine sense of community, especially in a city where sometimes things like schools and community events can feel super crowded. It's hard to feel strong interpersonal connections in places like schools and stuff like that, just because there's so many people. And I think it's really, really great that people like Alexander Civil are putting in the extra work, the extra effort to make sure that everyone feels included and empowered, and just like a genuine part of the community. I think it's really, really great.
Fabiola, did you sense the same thing in the group that you were working with?
Yes, I think that all of the
I'm sorry, Daniel, I think he asked Fabiola about Pagoda City.
It's okay. We'll let Daniel go, then we'll go to Fabiola. Go ahead, Dan. No, that's great. Go ahead, and then we'll let Fabiola correct you.
Yeah. I think that we saw the same thing from all the organizations that I saw, that I reviewed. But yeah, Fabiola, go ahead.
Where'd you go?
I'm in here.
Okay, go. You keep moving on my screen. That's the problem.
Well, I definitely think that sense of community came from Jay. Jay is someone who very much tries to put himself into community, and I mean, I don't know how to explain it, because he's someone that likes having ideas, and like once he gets an idea, he does his best to do that one thing and then continues on.
Good. How sustainability, I think, is going to be it's a challenge for any entity, any organization, and frankly, sometimes doing it once may be enough. What are your senses about how sustainable, how you're going to go about, how the community can go about sustaining these activities?
I guess I'll start by saying a few things. I think, we're going to need to wait and see, first of all, how these projects play out and what engaging in having this funding and engaging in these activities, sometimes for the first time for some of these groups, what that does for them as an organization in terms of attracting additional folks to be part of their work, maybe making them, giving them the opportunity to seek funding from other partners, from other funders, and seeing what their future trajectory potential is. One of the things that the Weimacin Foundation is able to do, because all of our funding is unrestricted and we can direct it to accomplish whatever goals we think are most important, we provide capacity building grants to organizations. That's one of the things that we've done with Barrio to help them grow and become more sustainable as an organization. So, that could be a future direction for some of these projects and organizations over time. So, there's a lot of potential and a lot of opportunity, and I think we all need to continue to support these very nascent groups and their activities and see where they lead.
Daniel or Lenny, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, one thing that I do not want to leave here without saying is what can make your application in the future successful, competitive at one of these Faro grants would be how reflective are you of this local community, of this neighborhood? How long have you, how plugged in are you with the community? How are you really impacting community engagement, community access? And yeah, how are you partnering up with other neighbors? So all of those narratives are important. And if you are not good at writing, you can send us your video. You can just, put some words in paper, but then send us your video and then explain all of that in your video. That's really good. And then just remember that community work takes time and it's messy. It's not a linear thing. I learned this from doing work in the community, and then I relearned the framing through collective impact, some work that is being done in Oak Brook. So just think about that framing, and then apply. Please apply for this funding.
We're going to cheat here a little bit and call on a couple of people. I know that we have at least one person I recognize as a fiscal sponsor. Heather, do you want to talk about, from your perspective, what the partnership relationship was like?
Sure. So we're really, really proud to be a fiscal sponsor for one of these projects. And it happens that the project that we're working on with Nadine Smatweiss is just a terrific mission-driven project that matches for BCTV as well. So getting community storytelling and deep dive, independent personal content out to community members, this was a great match for us. I think the process for being a fiscal sponsor was fairly simple, saying yes, we would do it, and then helping with some of the documentation and paperwork and that sort of thing as a nonprofit. I think the most important thing that we've participated in so far as a fiscal sponsor was meeting with Nadine and listening to their concept for the project, and then helping to give the support of, you know, maybe a little bit of experience from an organization and part of the planning framework for rolling out a project like this. Twofold that I see that's really valuable in this is one, it's actually kind of capacity building for our organization, bringing a writer closer to us to use our platforms and the distribution methods to help support their project in addition to a print piece. And then the second is I really like the concept for the Faro grant in bringing on individuals for grant projects as well, instead of saying, well, if you want to do that, you should incorporate as a 501c3 and start your own nonprofit and then go try to find funding, you know, for one time or multiple times smaller projects, to be able to lift somebody up into something they feel really passionate about by being able to support that as an organization with a similar vision. That's just it's a terrific opportunity for us, and we're really looking forward to seeing what they do with that.
So there's game for you as well. The next person we're going to call on is Daniel. You sort of brought this up, the 18th ward, and there's the probably leading agent of change in the 18th ward. Tanya, what's your reaction, and what do you think? Where can we take this?
Oh, I think this is an amazing project, and there's so many places it can go. I mean, I'm right there in Oak Brook, and I'm part of the OCIC, which Daniel talked about earlier, the community impact group as the 18th Ward Improvement Association. You know, we're cleaning up all the time and things like that, and it takes a lot of different parts working together. And I think this is something that the community garden would benefit from next year if it was open to community garden funding. The community garden increased from 12 residents last year to about 30, and we have a wait list because we have no more spots for them.
So it's growing just like this program is growing.
Yep.
And the last person I'm going to call out here asked a couple questions. And Pam, what do you think about how the county could be interested in this, how it might fit in with some of the stuff that the county's working on in community and economic development?
Oh, you know, Dave, as the county puts together, you know, what we call the economic development strategic plan, we recognize very clearly that community development, economic development, and housing right now are so integrated and have such profound effect on each other, so that if we can be working and helping to support organizations that are working within neighborhoods, that's really starting to build the fabric of where we need to be. People who live in neighborhoods, you know, want to be there. Neighborhoods become more stable, housing becomes more stable, and it really starts to lift everyone up. So being able to have projects like this incorporated really helps us along that whole idea of economic prosperity for everyone. So I just want to say congratulations to the foundation for recognizing that this is such impactful investment, and really great kudos to Barrio for continuing to be that voice that we need in that microcosm of neighborhoods. It's really important.
Great. And that's a good way, good segue, I think, as we're heading toward the end here. I like you talking about the fabric of the community. And I think that's what's really important here, is back to what Chris had said in her brief comments. That's part of what this is doing, is creating a community where people feel engaged and inclusive and like they belong and like they matter. And that's so vital for the success and vibrancy of this region. This is a great program, a great project. Congratulations, Barrio, for leading this, for engaging the community organizations in it, for your persistence in trying to do this, and for your willingness to keep it going, which is important. And thank you, Weimacin Foundation. Very, very interesting topic. Thank you all for joining us today. As I mentioned, we will send out the video to everybody. So you get a copy of that. It'll be posted on the Berks Alliance website and on the BCTV, as they are wont to do. So it's going to be highlighted there as well. We have another spotlight program next week, next Thursday, on Alvernia's Cultural Coalition, which is also an effort to try to create an inclusive and engaged community. And then a community forum in 2 weeks that we'll be hosting with the Federal Reserve Bank, the United Way of Berks County, and the Community Foundation. So we hope you will join us for that. Thank you all for taking your time today to join with us. Great program. So neat that there were 25 organizations willing to apply. And it sounds like, Pat, hopefully you're going to have more applying next time around, more money engaged in this.
Yep.
Thank you, Daniel and Barrio. Thank you very much.